ask for help, it would work like this. And by the way, I'm going to share with you talk tracks. This is kind of like when I use these tools, this is how I say it. Take whatever I'm saying, jot it down. I tried to put the actual words up on the screen, so sometimes, it's tough to like write everything down at the same time. But if I'm going to this guy, Ian, I might say to Ian, I said, hey, Ian, we've been working together for a bit. You guys got a lot of moving parts in this organization. Have you ever noticed that? And they always laugh and say, yeah. I'm wondering, would you maybe take 5 minutes and help me kind of understand the landscape of what's going on here? Maybe tell me like who's doing what to who reports. Would you be willing to do that? And almost every time they will jump to your aid, whether they are a +5 advocate or even a +1 advocate, and they will grab a marker or a pen and they will start to educate you on the informalities of the organization. How many of you have done this before? Just show of hands. Okay, awesome. Kudos. If you're not, and by the way, it was maybe 10% of the room, if this is something useful to you, go put this in place. There was a quote by Benjamin Franklin, and I love this. He said, if you want to make a friend, go ask for a favor. So sometimes when I've coached this with people, they've said, yeah, but I don't really know anybody well enough. They're not really a coach since they're giving. I said, don't worry about it. If they are at least neutral or slightly positive, you can still use it, and you might move somebody on your advocacy score from a +1 to a +2 or +3 just for the fact that they're getting to tell you how smart they are about their organization, and they're giving you great insight, and you're building relationships at the same time, okay? So it's a wonderful concept and a wonderful tool. You can do it over Zoom, you can do it face-to-face, you can do it in a whiteboard, blank piece of paper, doesn't matter. And it's actually better than them giving you an org chart. It's better than that, okay? Awesome, so maybe a takeaway you've got with there. Some of you who have spent time around me are tired of looking at this. I understand. If you're not, I'll take just a minute on it. Another concept that has helped tremendously to be able to get and identify the people is to use the decision-making process questions in Sandler. These are the who, what, why, where, when, and how questions of the decision-making process. And inside of that, what we found several years ago was that if you ask them in a specific order, you tend to get more information. So rather than going to somebody and saying, and this is bad form, by the way, don't replicate this, but if you went to somebody and said, well, who's the decision maker in this project, okay? And I've heard people do that. I'm glad that they're asking, but it's not the best way to ask. It's not optimized. So rather than do that, what if we asked, hey, tell me about the timeline of this project. When do you need to have it done and completed? When do you need to start? What's driving those dates? That's the why, number 2. Number 3, what's the events? What are the things that need to happen? What are the milestones that you need to hit when you make a decision like this and you choose a provider or supplier? And then hit number 4, hey, who's going to get involved? Who are the stakeholders in this thing along the way? And then now we weave into that. By that point, their wall has come down. They're kind of in the flow of the conversation. It's just natural to ask that next question. Who else gets involved? Who's responsible for this? How does it go down? And they reveal a lot more information when you put a sequence to things in that light, okay? And so let me throw this out to you too. You probably heard this from your trainer, okay? But here's the concept here. Ask the question, who besides yourself? Who besides yourself? Who else gets involved? Who are the other stakeholders? Who else cares about the result of this? Those are all good ways to ask the question. I'll give you 10 before we wrap up of other ways to go ask and identify to get access to power. But this is a good approach right here. Let me toss this out to you too. And it's this. Every time you go to a meeting and you set up a meeting, especially early on in the process, I want you to start by asking, and make sure you end that conversation by asking this question. Anybody else need to be in the meeting? It's such a fundamentally easy question to ask, but I've seen over time, about 50% of the time, if you ask that question, 50% of the time, they're going to have an epiphany moment, and they're going to say, oh yeah, we ought to invite Sandy, okay? half the time it doesn't do any good, but half the time you're identifying another person and you're bringing them into the sales process earlier, and you're shortening your sales cycle because you've got more of the influencers in the room earlier. All right, have I made my point with that one? Okay. If you do nothing, if you're not doing that one where you ask anybody else, need to be in the meeting, if you just did that, I am utterly convinced, if you didn't, and I want you to do a bunch of stuff from Sandler Conference, but if you did nothing else other than that, if you're not doing that today, that one thing would be a 100x return on your business over the lifetime of your sales career if you just consistently did that in terms of your time investment of what's going on in joining us here over this last couple days.
Thank you for watching this highlight video from the Sandler Summit. You can join us for the next Sandler Summit in 2024, March 19th and 20th at the Orlando World Center Marriott. Register now at sandler.com/summit.